Hi, and welcome to Terribly Fun Films. I'm your host, Bobby, and I know, it's been a while since we've had a proper review on this channel, and I'm sorry about that. But we are going to have 3 for you right now. 3. This is in part inspired by how I just happened to have watched 2 of these films in close succession, and one of the films, the third one, that I didn't watch in close succession, is one of the greatest horror films ever made. And I really want to highlight this, and in part a sort of response to my friend Byron's video on cliches. If you've been following all my videos, you will have seen that I have mentioned Byron before. He makes really cool, very interesting videos. His video on cliches was a sort of film theory essay on whether cliches are good or bad, if they should be used, they shouldn't be used, is originality something to be more highly praised, or are cliches around for a reason, that kind of thing. I watched that video the day he posted it, maybe the day after, and then after watching that video, I happened to watch a movie that's very original plot-wise, but I didn't much care for it. And that is the first movie we're going to look at. So, without further ado, we do have 3 films to get through. I'm going to try to keep this tight and short. Short for me in 3 videos. That would be like an hour and a half usually. So, you know, under an hour is what I'm saying. Let's take a look at the very first film. The first movie is Satanic from 2016. It is currently on Netflix. If it sounds like your cup of tea, go ahead and do that. It stars Sarah Hyland, and it should not be confused with the 2006 Jeffrey Combs bit of insanity that is also titled Satanic. This film sees a group of college kids on their way to Coachella, stop by Los Angeles for reasons I'm very unclear on. Something to do with one of the friends being really big into like demonology and that sort of shit, and they want to scope out an old abandoned building or something. I don't totally know that. It's very poorly thought out in that regard. And they meet a young runaway who they happen to see again when it looks like a gang of Satanists are about to sacrifice her. So they save her life, and then shit gets really, really crazy. Satanic's plot, in terms of how it unfolds and what specifically happens, is actually fairly original. I know, group of teens traveling to a place and then get haunted by something happens a lot. But the way it happens here, how it goes about it in terms of the story structure and that sort of thing, is fairly original, and there's something really cool to be said about that. Sadly, that's kind of the only positive I have for the film. The acting is kind of forgettable outside of Sarah Hyland. She's fairly good as our lead, but everybody else is either really boring and bland and very forgettable, or, in the case of the young runaway, who kind of causes everything to happen, really, really, really over the top. Some over the topness, given the character, works. But it's so ridiculous that, of course, this person is evil. She's a fucking cartoon. How do you not see that, right? Like, she's a cartoon. Come on, guys. That doesn't quite work for me. However, the actual way it progresses is kind of interesting. Except first, you think that the young runaway is trying to run away from this band of Satanists who are after her to sacrifice her, ostensibly to Satan. But you come to find out that they kicked her out, and they were doing a sort of excommunication ceremony because she was too nuts for them. And in the course of her being too nuts, our group of friends take her back to their hotel to help help her recover, and then they all wind up doing various crazy things. I don't want to give everything away. This twist is actually really well handled, and it's really well executed in terms of directing style and making the movie rewatchable in order to piece these clues together. Sadly, though, I did not care about anything going on in the film, in part because of the acting. Mostly, I feel, due to the writing. I didn't like any of the dialogue. I thought the writing in this film was really, really bad. And there's a cliche or two in there, but it does avoid a lot of cliches, especially some of the more obvious ones you would think would be in a film like this. But that's not enough. It's never engaging, and the direction might handle the story structure well, but it does not handle the scares well. There's no sense of atmosphere. There's no sense of timing. And there's just never like a mounting sense of dread or a believability factor that these characters are ever in danger. It's one of those films that actually probably could have used a few more cliches just for an easy shorthand to describe when the dangerous moments should be happening, if that makes sense. It's original, but it's not original enough to really be worth recommending due to all the other flaws the film has. And that's more annoying than anything else. Is it awful? No, not necessarily, but it's a big disappointment versus what it could have been and what I think it was trying to be versus the engagement level of the audience viewing it. It's a very static engagement. Things happened and then it was over and they didn't care. I'll bring up this high sense of originality because we're about to talk about the second film. Sheldon Wilson is no stranger to direct-to-DVD horror. He's even mounted some sci-fi original films like Call and Red Werewolf Hunter starring Felicia Day, movies I've really liked. He also happened to make what I consider one of the worst Sci-Fi Channel films. And that came out in 2015, I think it was, called The Hollow, about an evil demon tree. And it's insultingly terrible, if you ask me. Maybe I should rewatch it. With that being said, though, he has made really good films before. He made a sequel to Screamers. Either Robbie or Stephen Amell, I don't remember which one. That's great. Not just good, but really great, really in line with the ideas, the visions of that first film. And if you watch them back to back, aside from an obvious uptick in terms of the quality for the first film, because it had a bigger budget, you really would be hard pressed to not think that they were filmed back to back. Or maybe not back to back, but in really close proximity to each other. His latest film that is out now, I don't think the night before Halloween it's hit DVD yet. It's called The Unspoken. It got released on DVD in early 2016. Unspoken is about how a single mom and her son, who's 8 or 9, who's 6 or 7, move to a new house in a small town. And lo and behold, the house has a sordid past, evil history, and then weird things start happening. This film, plot-wise, is every cliche you could imagine with that premise I just gave you. The boy is being haunted by ghosts. The people get locked out of various rooms. The house is killing people. Yada yada. The difference being between Satanic and this film, The Unspoken, and the reason I'm kind of doing this as a triple feature overall, is really down to engagement. the characters are way more likable and way more believable. The acting is quite excellent, especially from our main star who plays Angela Jodelle Ferland and Neil McGonagle who plays the sheriff of the town that they moved to. They are rock solid here and help the movie be better than it would be otherwise. And yeah, it does hit the cliches you're expecting it to, roughly when you would expect them to. But because the characters are likable and relatable and engaging, you don't mind so much. And then a twist happens that makes it a little bit more original. And this is how you handle that sort of thing. While there are cliches present, it is done so in order to service something that it becomes more original by the end of the film. And I get if you're sick of these cliches, maybe this movie won't change your mind. And I really don't want to give it away. I think people should watch it because the editing is really good. The cinematography is excellent, especially in the house, which it's hard to make a big location like that seem all that different from various other things, including the Conjuring films, which are amazing. And I think they do a good job here. The lighting is fairly good, but it really is the acting and the dialogue that makes everything believable and engaging that make this worth seeking out. Yes, it has cliches. Yes, horror cliches, and cliches, generally speaking, can be a bit tiresome. But I feel they're tiresome when they're not used effectively and when they're not used in a way that really brings about the ideas that the story needs to be told. Here, it is real that they are being utilized for a film to be original by misdirecting what you're thinking is going on. And I appreciate that quite a bit. I don't have a ton to say about the Unspoken, which is another reason we're doing this as a sort of catch-all thing here. It's solid. It's entertaining. It's got great acting for a direct-to-DVD video release. And it does have cliches, but if you stick with it, you'll be really rewarded by something just crazy enough at its end to make your investment 100% worth it. With that being said, we're going to move on to the third film. The last movie we're looking at in this sort of triple feature review, call and response to Byron's cliche video thing. I don't know what I'm going to call this video yet. It's a movie called Grace the Possession. It was released in 2014. I found it in October of last year, I want to say, at Movie Monsters Movie Music and Movies, and watched it, and I consider it phenomenal. Not just good, not just okay, not, oh, it has phenomenal things, but no. Everything about Grace the Possession is brilliant. It's told from a first-person point of view. I don't mean like found footage. This is not a found footage film. This is not somebody recording their life with a camera always attached to them. No. It is simply told from the first-person point of view. And that point of view is the evil entity possessing the title character of Grace. If I say possession film, you think of very specific things. I know you do. The Exorcism, even bad possession films like The Exorcism 2. A lot of them recently. The Last Exorcism, that sort of thing. And you know, just plot-wise, this doesn't bring a whole lot to the table in that regard in terms of being fresh or original. It's strictly the broadest story terms possible, I mean. The title character, Grace, goes away to college and starts blacking out, and these weird things start happening to her. She can't explain them, and it turns out she's possessed by an evil entity, and there's a priest who will have to perform an exorcism. All those beats are there. But this idea that it's unoriginal belies not only how the movie is structured and tells its story, but also the ultimate end goal of the film. And I do need to warn you, there are spoilers here. There were minor spoilers for Satanic, but you could still watch that film and probably would have guessed already certain aspects of the runaway character. There were very few spoilers in the Unspoken, but here, in order to properly discuss what makes the story so original, outside of the broadest terms of it being a possession story, I will need to spoil certain things, so please bear that in mind. The movie opens in a hospital room where everything's sort of weirdly lit and sort of overexposed and white, and we see somebody giving birth, and then the camera flies in and enters the baby. And from the get-go, you realize that this film is being told from the evil entity's point of view. So every time we see Grace, her eyes are open, and so, because she's our point of view character, every time that happens, it is because the entity is awake in her, and that means something evil will happen. And you need to watch the film a few times to realize this. But it's handled so well. The found footage thing might sound like a gimmick at first, and I'm on board as not liking hardcore Henry very much. There was nothing about that story that required it to be a first-person perspective. You could have made it a third-person perspective, and then you would have been left with a generic sci-fi action story with good action scenes. And you know, that could have been enough. It felt to me kind of like a gimmick. Not bad per se, just unnecessary. Here, though, I feel it is necessary. I believe the story and the way they chose to tell it demands that we follow it through the entity's point of view. Because, for example, Grace is at a party, she sees a friend who's sort of been ignoring her all night. They have a fight, and she imagines the friend goes over the side of the edge and dies. That doesn't actually happen. The entity is planting these weird seeds of distrust. And it only makes sense if we can view things as much as possible through Grace's eyes, why this would be wrecking her the way it does. It is brought to beautiful life by star Alexia Fast. She is Grace, and she makes the character very empathetic and interesting. She wants to get out of her grandma Helen, played by Lynn Shay's controlling, very strict religious upbringing as much as possible, but she doesn't want to not be who she was raised to be, and I think they both do excellent jobs of bringing that out in their characters. As things get crazier and crazier, Grace goes to a priest played by Joel David Moore, who's the best actor in the film. He steals every scene he's in, and they decide to do an exorcism and all this stuff, but it doesn't work out that way. The exorcism sort of fails. So the priest, his name is Luke, offers up himself in exchange for Grace's life. The demon would leave Grace and enter the priest, and that's what happens in what is an epically jaw-dropping bit of brilliant cinematography and camera work and special effects, all blended into something that is perfection. It's hard to describe what makes this bit at the end of the film, not the very end, but close to the end, so intensely interesting. But basically, they're in the aisle of the pews of the church, and he makes the deal with the evil entity, and it flies out of her. And we're from the evil in this perspective, so we're flying out of Grace. The camera comes swooping around like this, to enter into loop, and they're basically frozen in time with all these like weird bits of shredded curtains and whatnot going on. And so we go, whoa! It's a huge camera crane loop into the back of somebody's skull, just for us to wake up, and he's about to lead his congregation into a massive thing. And when we wake up is when the entity's there. The whole movie is a setup for an evil entity taking over the entire congregation of the church. That's brilliant. More importantly, it's brilliantly done. The film is so original, not because it's a possession story, but because of how it's a possession story. As you've heard me discuss before, as the quote from Roger Ebert about the movie is not what it's about, but how it's about. You can be as original as you want, like Satanic. If you don't have the atmosphere or the drive or the cleverness to be able to pull that off in terms of talent and technical proficient filmmaking ability, it won't matter. Nobody's going to care, because that movie ultimately was dull for me. If you are like The Unspoken, which had cliches and was a bit predictable at times, but because the writing was so good and because it felt so realistic, that elevates it. And even though it is done with cliches, it becomes something kind of interesting and worth watching. And then we have this, which in the broadest terms is a bit predictable, but it goes in such unique directions in its writing, which is great. And the acting brings it all to life perfectly. And the style of the film isn't just a gimmick to go, oh, look at me, but it's actually necessary in order to build up to the climax of the film and what the whole story's been about, which is an evil entity trying to take over as many people as possible. You need that first person perspective to realize the scope of this evil entity's process and idea and plan, and it's stunning. The story was thought up by Chris Parr and Jeff Chan. Jeff Chan and Chris Parr also wrote the script, and Jeff Chan directed the film. So clearly this was something that spoke to him, that needed to be told by him. It's a story that just got in his brain and wouldn't rattle out until he got it out there on camera, and I believe that. It's original, it's daring, and it's made in a unique way, and it has unique, different possession elements to it. And if you have not seen Grace in Possession, I recommend doing so. It avoids almost every cliche you can imagine due to the nature of how it's filmed. It had such interesting and well thought out, well-rounded characters that even if the few cliches that are present annoy you, you will be engaged on the front, and has such an amazing balls to the wall ending that it needs to be experienced. So, in response, Byron's thing, are cliches good or bad? They're neither. They can be good. They can be bad. It's all about how you utilize them. We looked at one originally written movie that had very few cliches and did not work because it was boring. We looked at one film that has a lot of cliches but had solid, engaging characters and believable dialogue to make it at least a good one-time watch. Then we looked at the film that is another in a long line of possession films that's quite literally one of the greatest horror movies ever made, is one of the most original horror movies ever made, and is a must for every horror genre fan out there to experience and watch, because it is so different and so unique, and everything about the film does work. It comes together in a beautiful, momentous way. Yeah, so clearly, if the Unspoken sounds like something you would like, I do recommend it. I thought it was good. I wouldn't bother with Satanic whatsoever. But Grace the Possession needs to be seen to be believed. As always, thank you for watching. I've been your host, Bobby, and I will see you next time. Quick PS. These sort of shortened reviews of films are also a sort of trial run for something I'm going to try out this upcoming October. I will explain more on that when we get closer to the time, but I wanted to see if I could fit a review in, between 6 and 8 minutes. Looks like I could, so I'm excited to try this experiment in October. I hope you enjoyed this. I realize this is a callback to a video some of you probably haven't seen, but I hope it worked for you. And